doing?
I am really good. Thank you so much for having me on to your platform.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining in. I was really interested to talk to you because I think in the beginning of this year, I also thought about trading and get started with trading. And in January, everything crashed, and I was not sure, like, maybe it's the best time to get started. So I thought, if I could talk to an expert and then get his opinion on things, I think that would be really interesting. So, can you please tell me a little bit about your background and how did you get into trading and investing?
Absolutely, 110%. So yeah, my name is James Martin, for those who don't know, and I run a group on Facebook called Dentists Who Invest. And that group really came about because of my interest, as you've already said, in trading, investing, initially in crypto, but then more broadly in other assets. Any asset that you can use basically to grow your financial wealth, you grow your financial well-being, and create that financial freedom that people are after and is so sought after. So basically, I am a dentist. I trained as a dentist in 2016. That's when I qualified. And a few years after that, I started getting into cryptocurrency. But a bit like what you hinted at just a minute ago, I started at what was in the short term not so good a time, because it was at the start of 2018, which is when crypto had a bit of a downturn. And anybody who's in the crypto space knows that the rips are really good, but the dips are not so good. The dips are the price that you pay for the rips, because when there's upside, it's massive, but then there can also be these huge periods of calmness or downturns as well. Overall, the trend is that it eventually goes up. But like I say, you have to be patient, and you have to definitely wait it out and ride out the storm a little bit sometimes. So I bought at the wrong time, but what that taught me was that obviously I needed to learn to improve. And so I began to learn more about crypto. And then I realized that there's only so much you can understand about crypto until you understand finance on a more fundamental level. And that's when I backtracked a little bit and started learning about money. And that's when I learned how to invest with a long-term perspective. I feel like a lot of people go into the crypto world, the finance world, and try to make quick money. And it rarely goes that well. It might go well at the start, but then it won't go that well after a while, because what you'll soon learn is that actually there are some underlying principles and mechanisms that you need to understand to guarantee that success continues. And that's what you need to understand in order to make that consistent. And that was definitely me at the start. And now I'd like to say that I learned a lot. I've learned how to be patient, patience with a capital P. And when I say that, what I mean is that you have to emphasize that word massively, emphasize that concept, because that is how you're successful in any market, never mind just the crypto world. And that is what that whole experience taught me. And then through learning about finance, through my self-taught educational finance, just reading loads of books and understanding it, I was able to create my platform, Dentists Who Invest, and share that wisdom on there with a lot of dentists who earn very well, but they don't know what to do with that money once they've earned it, because they've never thought about the next level. And actually, there's some really simple things that you can do, any dentist can do, to protect their wealth. And yeah, trading gets talked about a lot, but I actually feel like a lot of dentists should learn about investing first of all, which is how to grow your money with a more long-term perspective or more long-term principles or ideals. That is probably the best way, especially for people who are not so time rich, maybe time poor, as most dentists are. And then as a consequence of that, maybe get into trading a little bit, but it's not for everybody. And it's actually deceptively difficult. So that is my life story. And that's how I came to be here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I know you particularly work with dentists at this point, and with your courses that you have that we'll be talking about later. I want to understand, like, what are the biggest knowledge gap or gaps do you see when you talk to dentists when it comes to investing or finance?
Absolutely brilliant question. So the first one is to think that if you hold all your money in cash, when I say cash, what I mean is the British pound, the American dollar, is to think that you're safe. All right. And I've heard a really great analogy on this the other day. So let's say you came to work in my dental practice and I said to you, okay, we're going to work for 7 hours. You're going to work for 7 hours in this day. I'm going to pay you £100 per hour. So you'd say, yes, please. £700 for a day's work. That sounds pretty good. Where do I sign? Sign me up. Yeah. So you did your day's work. And at the end of the day, I said 7 hours, you paid and done for. Here's your 700 quid. Thank you very much. See you later. Yeah. Now, what about 2 weeks later? What about if 2 weeks later I came to you and I said, hey, do you remember that day you worked for me the other week? My records show that you only actually worked for 6.5 hours, not 7 hours. I'm going to have £50 back, please. Now, a lot of people would say, no, they didn't. That's obviously a complete fabrication. I worked for 7 hours. I remember doing that. That was the deal. You paid me at the time. Why have things changed now? That, in a nutshell, is basically how inflation works. The
Wow.
record of your labor is being erased with time. Yeah. And even though you still have that 700 quid, there's no money that you've actually given back to me. It means that it's only worth 6.5 hours labor. Yeah. That's how inflation works. And that's because your labor is being stored or recorded in a form, in a means of existence, on a record that is fundamentally flawed, and it is depreciating with time. That is the fundamental essence of how inflation works, and it's to do with the record of how you store the fact that you worked for 7 hours. Yeah. Now, what if there was a better way to record the fact that you worked for 7 hours? What about if you could store that in another way, store that record in another way that actually gave you more hours with time? What about if I went to you, okay, actually, do you remember how we thought we worked for 7 hours last week? I've actually double checked everything and you've worked for 7.5 hours. So here's more money. You say, yes, please. Thank you very much. Yeah. When you buy certain things in the market, in the stock market, in crypto, or in other assets, they effectively pay you just for holding them because they only ever go up in value over long enough periods of time. But you have to look for the right things. You have to know what you're doing. But the gap between not knowing what you're doing and knowing what you're doing is literally this little tiny piece of knowledge, okay? Maybe a few concepts. And that's what every dentist is that's the distance between every dentist in understanding how that works and how they can get paid in an appreciating record, a record that actually says you worked for more than you did at the time as time goes on, and that consistently appreciates. That's the one greatest lesson that I could give to everybody. But that sounds really crazy. That sounds completely against everything that we take for granted in this world. But that actually exists. You just have to have patience, and you have to have the right frame of mind, and you have to have the right understanding. That's the main thing. That's the coolest way anybody ever explained it to me.
I just love that analogy. Thank you so much for
Good.
sharing that. And I know you talked about like learning about money and investing and trading over the past years. So, what is the best financial advice that you have received until now, and why do you think that it's highly relevant?
Yeah, the best piece of financial advice is for me to understand that when you know what you're doing, that there are certain things out there that only ever appreciate in value, and it's understanding that, and also to understand that you're not safe when you hold cash, because everybody thinks that just because they've got the same number on the bank screen that's worth something. Yeah, that will always be worth that. Actually, it's depreciating with time. So it's taxation via inflation. So what that means is that every time the government creates more money, they're effectively taking your money from you and using it to distribute amongst society. They can effectively put their hand into your bank account, pinch it, say, thank you very much. Now that's ours. We're taking that back. That's the greatest thing to understand. That is the greatest thing to understand. You're not safe if you hold cash, and that there are better ways of storing the value of the record of the labor that you put in. And that you still worked as many hours, that's still going to be there. You still put in that effort. But now all it is just storing it in a better means, storing it in a better record. That was the greatest thing, because then I realized in that instant that actually I needed to learn this stuff. It's not optional. You must learn this stuff. And also as to understand just how big the problem is. You know, inflation is, the official figure of inflation is like 7-8% in the UK. Now, depending on who you believe, 7 or 8%, if that's the official figure, isn't always the accurate figure for a variety of reasons. Now, you can go as far down the rabbit hole you like in conspiracy theories on that one. And I'm not a wild one for conspiracy theories, but I do believe that the official figures are probably slightly manipulated to be an underestimate. Yeah. But if you're going to believe, even if we do go with the official ones, that it's like 8%, that still means that your money is worth 8% year on year. So if you have, to put that in real terms, if you have £100,000 in a bank account, 1 year later, you'll still have £100,000, but you'll only be able to buy the equivalent of £92,000 because you've lost 8% of your wealth. Yeah. Even though you have exactly the same figure in your bank account. Okay. Whereas if you invest in the stock market, it can consistently appreciates by 10% every year. You know what I mean? So, well, if you buy certain things, but you have to know what you're doing. It becomes as a little more deep than that the more you read into it, but that's the basic concept.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now I want to talk about trading. So, considering the busy schedules of dentists, I would say, because there are some staffing issues and all of those things going on currently. So, how can dentists get started with trading, and how can they be consistent with it? I know you said that it's not for everyone, but those who are interested.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give them?
Here's what I would say. I would say, first of all, the investing thing is probably a good place to start, but you can trade, and there's always going to be a way to do it. It's just about finding a means that works for you. All right. So there'll be different styles of trading. So if you're someone who's a day trader, you're going to be attached to your screen all day long. And that's probably not going to be feasible for most dentists who have to spend days in clinic. If you're a principal dentist, you've got your practice to run, you've maybe got a family, etc. So probably that's out the window for most dentists. Plus, as well as that, it's something that I see a lot of people not do correctly, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about it. So you can get there, but it takes a huge investment of your time to get to that point. Yeah, so I would just be wary on that one. The second thing I would say is that, first of all, to go back to the investing and trading thing, understand the difference between the two, first of all. So if you're investing, what that means is you're buying and you're holding indefinitely. So what that means is that when you buy some gold, some stocks, whatever, you're buying it and you're holding it to until such times as you've retired. Yeah. So that means you're basically buying and forgetting about it. But remember, that asset is appreciating, that record of your hard work is appreciating and growing with time. Yeah. Which is awesome, which is brilliant. And it's just a better way of storing your labor. Yeah, it's volatile. Yeah, it goes up and down in the short term, but the overall theme is that it goes up, whereas cash goes consistently down. So that's investing. The second that you sell that before you hit retirement, you're actually a trader because you're jumping in and out of the market. That's the difference, okay? Now, within that, obviously there is a massive scope. What point do you sell it at? Do you sell it tomorrow? Do you sell it next week? Do you sell it within the next hour? That's how fast your trading style is, yeah? But that definition of a trader right there, because there's so much scope for when you sell it, what that means is that you don't have to be one of these gunslingers, these fast eddies who's in front of the computer all day long. You can be someone who has one eye on your portfolio, because in the modern era, there's so many apps that we can use to track it, even on our phone. Come home and sell something if you need to in the evening, and then therefore you're still a trader. So for most dentists, that's a more realistic style. That's a swing trader. Yeah, there might be a little bit of a compromise. Maybe you won't be able to get in and out at exactly the right time that you want to, but you'll find a style that works for you. The main thing is to understand that trading, there is so many different ways that you can do it. And there is no holy grail, there's only your holy grail. And how that looks for you has to be learned through experience. You can understand the concepts, you can understand the principles, but as to what exactly works around your time scale, your time frame, your psychology, your profile, how much time you have in the day, how much money you have, what asset you want to trade, that's unique to every single one of us. Just like how our dentistry is, every one of us, dentistry, there's so much scope for art in there. No two dental surgeons do procedures the same way. It's always slightly different, and trading is just like that. But you have to start to learn what that is, but do it with little bits of capital, not too much money, just little bits.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I love that. I know you talked about, let's say, retirement, and a lot of people these days, and especially with everything that's been going on in the crypto market, a lot of people talk about early retirement and all. So please mention the top 5 wealth building exercises for dentists, and let's start from the safest to the riskiest.
Top 5 wealth building exercises. Okay. Well, I would definitely think an education on money and how it works is the very, very, very first thing. Because when you understand that you're going to consistently lose through having cash versus consistently winning by holding other assets and holding the right things, that is the best thing. Okay. That is the very, very, very fundamental lesson, because that puts the wind in your sails. Okay. Then the next thing I would do is educate yourself on the accounts that you have available to you. Get an understanding of your risk profile, who you are as an individual. Are you able to handle volatility in the short term? Realistically, you should be. There's a difference between volatility and risk. Some people will say you buy something that's high risk, but actually that just means that it's high volatility, which is a totally different thing. So people use those terms, they equate them as the same thing, but actually it's different. If you have something that's volatile, but it gives you way better returns, then isn't that something you want to buy versus something that's not volatile, but gives you terrible returns, but yet you're considered to be low risk? Isn't it a higher risk in a weird way if you're buying the thing with worse returns that's not even going to be able to beat inflation in the first place? then the risk is there that inflation is going to be low, and actually it's consistently quite high. So just think about it like that before people out there profile themselves as low risk and high risk, because actually that's a total paradox if we think about it, yeah? But that's something that's very poorly explained, yeah? The fourth thing, sorry, that I would understand is that your psychology plays a huge bearing on what you do. Understanding who you are actually determines a lot of what you'll do in the trading world. Understand the narrative as well, that you're playing the long game, and don't try to walk before you can run. That's the fifth one that I would say. Understand the principles, understand investing, and then try to trade. Don't do it like me. Don't do it the wrong way around. It doesn't ever really end that well. And that's what I want. I don't want anybody to fall into the same trap that I did at the start. And I learned my lessons the hard way. I learned those things so that everybody else can avoid that pain, those problems, so to speak. And that's why I say that from a place of experience.
Thank you so much. And I know based on your experience, you have created two wonderful courses. So can you please tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure, 110%. So I've got two programs, both for dentists who want to understand the finance world in way more detail and understand how to be successful in it. So the first one is access to Bitcoin, everything you need to know in order to invest and trade. Obviously, we will walk before we can run. Invest first of all. That's the angle of the crypto course. That's the point of the crypto course, because there's so many crypto courses out there that teach us how to trade, but actually they don't teach us the basics from the bottom up. That is the point of access to Bitcoin, and that is what it will do. And also home it towards the dental field, because this information, whilst it's out there and it could be taught better, where else are you going to find it in a place where it's taught as well as it could possibly be, the right way around, and also honed towards dentists? So it's completely unique to the face of planet Earth. From my knowledge, I don't believe there's another crypto course out there for dentists, but I'd be very interested to learn if there is. The second one, which is Total Finance, incorporates the access to Bitcoin course. It incorporates the crypto course. Plus, as well as that, it gives you everything that you need to know to create a financial master plan as a dentist, because there's so much information out there about finance that dentists need to know, full stop. That's first off. And then second off, how do we hone that directly towards the needs of a dentist? Most dentists out there are sitting on a 4 or 5 figure tax haven with a correct conversation with an accountant. That's a fundamental part of the course. That's one of the elements of the course. Never mind when we get on to how to grow your money with time. It's absolutely stunning. I see it with my own eyes every day, and I'm privileged to be able to bring that information to the dental world.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing all this information. I'm not a dentist, but I found it like really useful. And
That's cool.
yeah, yeah. And I will definitely share the links to your courses with this video. And can you please tell me what's the best way for people to contact you?
Yeah, awesome. So best way to stay in touch with me if you want to find out more, Dentists Who Invest on Facebook. That is the Facebook group from where this all started. I basically started it with no intention in mind. Nothing. I never really set out to create anything, and then all of a sudden all these people joined it, and then next thing I know there was all these thousands of people in the group, which is awesome, and it's great to see. And it's privilege. I feel really privileged that there's such an appetite for this amongst the dental community, and that I can help and play a role in that. So anybody who wants to learn more about improving their finances, that is the group for you. There's a lot of information on there, just general information about finance, but also specifically honed towards the dental world. So anybody who wants to improve their finances, it's for you. Specifically dentists, you've got even more to gain.
Yeah. Thank you so much, James. Thank you so much once again.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. See you later.
See you later. Bye-bye.